Left, right, sheet.
Sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
Sounds reasonable.
You got I have it. I could try it. It's in the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I can scroll over the different slides. Oh.
I follow up on these.
Thank you all for being here. This has not been pre-timed or rehearsed. There are 13 pages, more slides than minutes that we have available to us. I think we'll try to do this around an hour, but I think we really, our group is really interested in feedback. I have a couple of group members here, so I'll try to introduce some ideas and then be quiet for a little bit of time. Kay's going to take some notes, and then we'll move on to topics if we have time at the end, maybe come back and revisit the particularly interesting ones. Strategic Planning Committee Group 1, Goal 1. We were provided with documentation right up front, sort of a template from which to begin. The goal statement that we were provided was increase the recruitment of a diverse student body ready for the rigorous challenges of higher education. Our committee was Bill Winter from the Budget Office, Jem, the Dean of the School of Engineering, Jeff Waypool, Vice President for Student Affairs, Jim Monahan, who's with us today, Director of Graduate International Admission, Kevin Wathen, Director of Veterans and Military Affairs, Dr. Makisha Harris-Lee, who's currently heading up our pre-collegiate advising, pre-collegiate programs, and she's an academic advisor, Nathan Brewer, Director of Marketing, Morris Manning from the School of Business, Dean Harrison from Nursing, Susan Seibert from the Career Center, Tara Cole Brown from Graduate and International Admissions, Dr. Phelps, who is an advisor and interim director of Retention and Student Success, Veronica Jeffries from the East St. Louis Charter School, the principal down there, Zachary Brummett, our undergraduate student, Dr. Ruck, the director of the Honors Program, Jasmine Rosales, who's our graduate student representative, Jennifer Harbaugh, Associate Director of Undergrad Admissions, and that's me, Scott Lowe-Bredick. I know most of you Associate Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Management. So kind of enrollment management heavy, kind of light on faculty, although deans are well represented in the group. You have copies of all these. Wording hopefully is legible there, if not up here. The documents that we used as we began our work in January included the previous or existing SIUE strategic plan, which actually was pretty helpful because a lot of these ideas were already mapped out there. The current diversity and inclusion strategic plan, which has some very specific enrollment and retention goals in it, so that we have to kind of cross-reference those. And then for those of you who weren't involved in the process, each of the units got the goals of the other goals involved with this year's strategic planning process. So we kind of had a roadmap. We could kind of start with the idea of where would we overlap. And but I have to say, as of this date, the groups have not had an opportunity to get together and talk about synergies or lack thereof or overlap redundancies. I think that's something that will come out through this public vetting process. Yeah, you can't read that, except you probably can in front of you. There's the original goal statement was to increase the recruitment of the diverse student body. And then these objectives or subcategories were provided for us. This is the last time you'll see these. You've got them in writing. But the group, I'll show you the current status of the goal statement, and then the objectives all shifted rather significantly in tone and intent. But those were always there for us to access. And someone may tell us, no, we're going back to those. The original goal statement was increase the recruitment of the diversity of the student body ready for the rigorous challenges for higher education. We discussed this for a long time. Would like some feedback on this. We switched to the word optimize, knowing there's some pitfalls there. Optimize enrollment of prepared and diverse students. Increase the recruitment of a diverse student body ready for the evolving challenges of higher education and lifelong learning. The idea of optimize, if I can paraphrase the discussions from Jim and Tyler, or Kears, or everybody else, Kevin from the group, is increase across the board always the right thing? Is there a right size for SIUE? If enrollment leads to retention. I don't know if any of the committee members want to comment on that. Any thinking about our shift in wording? Any questions from others of that?
I have a question on the topic. I don't know if I'm at the right place and time to ask this, but I mean, I have a question regarding that particular goal and objective. You have optimized enrollment or prepared and diverse students. My question is, we have upward bound programs that are connected to our East St. Louis campus, as in like the directors of those programs will be math and science and the regular upward bound. They're SIUE employees in our East St. Louis center, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm a faculty, and I've in the past worked with upward bound math science, and I mean, I know there are some other faculty who would be interested in working with them. That seems to be like the upward bound students seems to be prepared and diverse students. And do we have anything?
So we do allude to, I think we do allude to in this, and if we don't cover it here, additional languages you think would be valuable, creating pathways.
Yeah.
So yes, we allude to that specifically moving forward. What I forgot to say at the beginning is our last group meeting was way back on April 19th. And our group had asked that before we proceeded that maybe we could get feedback from the other groups in central locations. So we didn't, speak for those of us who were here, I think the whole group agreed, didn't consider ourselves to be done at all. So if we see holes, that's one of the reasons we're here today. But yes, we talk about pathways for sure. Okay.
Scott,
Yes?
I want to go back a little bit. What is a prepared student? Was it prepared and diverse together?
So, prepared to succeed at SIUE. So it would mean that, and the folks that are here, these are from the committee, we can pull out our conversation. Let me see if I have any of our big thoughts here. Optimize, result to optimize. Prepared student, that is a hint to not lowering admission standards and not just trying to increase enrollment, to increase head count, to increase revenue. And if prepared, and I don't know if all of our language will reflect your concern here, but we did talk extensively about pre-enrollment preparation. Dr. Makisha Harris-Lee is working with the charter school in Al Collinsville High School, spending a whole year with students. For instance, we making sure that those who might be marginally prepared are prepared, no matter what their test scores say, that we're just not enrolling students that we could say, got a great freshman class, and now they're gone. Does that?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. I want to just, because I know it's getting lots of different topics, I guess I want to also express that there are faculty who are interested in working with some of those students, like upward bound programs,
Oh,
for
absolutely.
example. But I don't see from the faculty perspective a pathway. I mean, I've applied for, other than applying for external grants, I don't see, for example, internal pathways to do that, us or our graduate or undergraduate students, for example. So I just want to express that, like, I've met with Desiree Tias and Chris Andre and others, and so
opportunities for faculty
to help prepare them, honestly.
to whether it's, so the other pathway on the graduate level, that Tara was very interested in making sure it made its way in here, and you'll see in a later slide, is for graduate programs. Because she does so much work, did so much work with the HBCU programs, which will continue. So it was beyond the notion of just the traditional freshmen, but also creating pipelines and pathways for students, for graduate school, our own students that may not have thought of themselves as graduate professional student material. And then in the case of Tara's project out of Jim's shop, the HBCU. But I hear what you're saying. Our faculty are also interested in participating and supporting those pathways.
Yeah, in particular, the Singapore town.
Okay.
Because that's
I've
a
now
very
heard that 3 times.
specific.
Upward.
Yeah. And also, they have a need for our graduate assistants or undergraduate assistants, and faculty are the ones who advise those. So it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for
Got it. Got it. Anybody else on that past slide, or if you've read ahead here? These were so that's the new goal statement, and then we submitted back to the leadership team all these questions. What do we mean by optimize? Is everything from, is this revenue driven? Is this, so we have, the plan is not finished. It is still full of questions if we are accept this premise. But to me, Jim had, I think it's on this slide, Jim suggested that in engineering, what it is in engineering, optimize means do the best you can with the resources and time available. Oh, that actually helps a lot. Oh, here's a different way to look at the big questions just about the objective 1. Here's Jim's comment in engineering, the term optimize means best level, considering resources, strengths, and limitations. And then we said strategically optimize. So can you guys give us any help or feedback, more feedback on the word optimize versus grow versus whatever? The idea here is to have a very healthy and robust enrollment, to make sure the academic programs are viable. That's actually the real reason, even though we think about revenue and SIUE getting bigger. You have certain academic programs that need critical mass to function. If you're on our committee, can you talk to us about optimize or grow or increase, and how you feel about that word? Bill's on that committee.
It's not inspirational. I mean, you see optimize, and you get a different feel than if you see grow. I understand why you did it.
I would disagree. I feel that optimize sounds better than growth.
Okay.
Maybe I'm coming from the sciences and optimization is all for us.
Not inspirational, and I disagree, so 1 to 1. Other language besides grow, increase, or optimize that we're looking at? Did you just open your mouth and take a breath, Jeff? Or
It was, it was still in thought, but
Okay.
I like optimize because of, it requires a little bit more thought and analysis than just grow. So I think it specifies a little bit more intentional planning.
And try not to go into my admissions enrollment hat too much and try to facilitate this, but everyone at the university should understand that we are always trying to grow and increase the prospect pool and the applicant pool. Always, always, always. When people say, what's the enrollment plan? What's the recruitment plan? It's always to grow interest, visitors to campus, partnerships, anything that supports more interest and more options, more students having access to us, and us having access to more students. That's what we're always doing. This is really about the who enrolled and what's the planning for them. Any other thoughts here before we move on from that to some of the, well, this is the freshman. I'm sorry, I got my slides mixed up. So we start with objective 1 is actually the first-time freshman transfer students and post-traditional students. This is a phrase we added, which basically many of us, many of you are working on, working with students who have some college, no degree, and are more of the adult non-traditional age. This refers to traditional first-time freshmen, traditional transfers, and now that group of students has also been added to the undergraduate mix. And I think we have some actual strategies here. Oh, refer to your handout. There are more strategies here than other places. You'll see as we move on. For the other objectives, the strategies are more general, not as well developed. Engage prospective students and parents earlier. Strategy 1, strategy 2, expand the geographic recruitment regions for SIUE. Those were changed. Develop, Tyler might want to speak to this, but this was the retention group and the transfer student group developing more clear opportunities for students to see how their credits and interest would convert to actual coursework at SIUE ahead of time. Someone to do a better job of interpreting that.
I think with the growing and ever-changing landscape of higher education, we're also seeing a significant amount of high school students now bringing dual credit coursework to the university, and even in some cases, students are graduating with an associate's degree the same week they're getting a high school diploma. And so they come in and they basically already knocked out 2 years of college. So really creating an individualized plan for these students as they are in high school and they're transitioning to college, getting in touch with them sooner to help them know what requirements, what obstacles they'll have, well in advance of just showing up and saying, okay, I'm here for what you do.
And Scott, I think also you had mentioned that we added that final category of post-traditional students. And while we've maybe had opportunities for that in the past, it's even more of an emphasis now because we're trying to reach out to students, to people who need degrees. And there are some challenges if you only look at like graduating high school seniors or even transfers. Community college enrollment is down in Illinois. And so we're trying to reach out to other groups who need education in a more targeted way than in the past, perhaps.
And I refer to your handout because clearly what happened. I have a PC. This is a Mac. These slides converted from what you have on your handout. So strategy 1 is basically engage traditional prospects earlier in the process. Strategy 2 is expand the geographic reach of SIUE, and that has been underway, but that is something we'll continue to do.
Can I ask you a question? In strategy 1 and number 2, what is our current target population and what do you mean by increasing engage earlier?
Geographic reach?
Well, I don't know what you mean. It says
Okay.
current target populations.
So for traditional freshmen and traditional transfers, it's pretty much the St. Louis metropolitan region, the state of Illinois, for both of those groups. And then for freshmen, there are concerted efforts all the way down to the sophomore year in high school in contiguous states, where we have a history of students, engaging students who then enroll. Pretty successful that the numbers are small, but being pretty successful in growing those. Nothing too exotic. Kansas, Iowa, Indiana, Arkansas. The potential to grow further would be doing a better job of tapping into the 100,000 plus SIUE alumni across the board. Well, that's just domestic. Jim and his team travel the United States, specific partners in China, Vietnam, India. So that's it's a big answer. But for what we think of traditionally, and then the program is something like art therapy will recruit students, a small number of students, but nationwide. So under, following up on what Bill was post-traditional student initiatives, including, again, these are the adult students with some college and no degree, corporate partnerships, online degree completion programs, varied course delivery options, and targeted messaging and marketing for those groups. What's happened since this time, so this includes what we would think of as educational outreach, Mary Ethling's group right now. So being able to do, it's kind of a pipeline initiative, but understand what the skill sets are of the major employers in the region and see where our academic program aligns with what's needed in industry for a student who's not really set up to go through a traditional academic program. Online degree completion, we're going to have anywhere between 2 or 8 new programs going to market next fall. Based on market research we've done in the region, Chris has got us moving on a lot of that, and the skill sets that are needed to be delivered in the region. Some of them aren't necessarily attached to any particular corporate entities. It's just what the students in the area are going to need. Just an area we haven't done a lot in the past, and now we were suggesting to ramp it up. The financial incentives, there are some, I used the A+ program over in Missouri, and we had more freshmen from Missouri last year than ever before. Students who are in high school in Missouri and part of an A+ program, it's a special program in the state of Missouri, have huge incentives to get started at a community college and then transfer to a 4-year institution, kind of keeping them from coming across the river. So this is just not a fully vetted strategy that there's a huge traditional transfer population over there. If we want to compete for the students that we desire over there, we have to be aware of those sorts of financial incentives. Yes, more scholarship money is always good for the student, but this just suggests that it be spent in more specific or strategic ways than just increasing the scholarship. Anybody on our committee want to say anything else about those 2 areas? So this is the one that we'll continue to try to work harder and smarter in all the traditional areas. This is probably the one, again, trying to follow what Bill said, that we're doing the most new stuff and are open to, if those conversations and thinking haven't reached your departments as faculty, it should. It should become a type of program that if there's interest in an academic department to deliver credit hours or degrees that way, we would embrace that.
What are going to be the online degree program? You said there will be 2?
See, I don't know how much of this is, well, right now there are 2 that seem relatively sure. The PR track in applied communication sciences, Dustin, working with his group. Business is looking at developing undergrad degree completion that had so much success with the MBA program. And then there are others that are close. There's negotiation might be a strong word, but the details have to be worked out on the academic side. The market research has been done by Chris. The departments don't disagree with market potential, but then it has to do with the academic structure of the institution and how we do that. And if it's not next fall, we're starting, the language we're using is maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, what new opportunities will we bringing to market. Graduate and professional enrollment to be optimized, there's that word again, our big question. Who decides what optimize is? I hate to say Bill's the person that said that, I think we all understand it. You can, again, optimize enrollment by reducing your price or having a lot of graduate assistants. That's not the intention here. How could we increase by attracting paying students? Some of the strategies, we get a little more brief with the strategies there. Increase visibility of SIU graduate programs, reach a nation internationally by demonstrating your impact on the community and the economy of the world. Sounds sort of lofty. Anybody want to comment about that? So that, you always hear that horrible phrase, I hate it, because I'm a moment guy, the best kept secret sort of thing. We don't want to have any of that. If we have a program that is outstanding, we want to make sure folks are aware of it. Jim would tell you that when he travels, because he told me yesterday, that's why it's so fresh in my mind, that international partners, students, agents, are all very interested in things like rankings. So if you have a program ranked in the top of a certain category, or your school is overall, that is important to get that message out there, and that can be a reason why we would be considered by a potential student. Except this, strategy 2 is about making sure our academic programs are designed and delivered in formats that students desire. Accelerated, combined, keeping students enrolled as SIUE students with maybe without a break. Strategy 3, this refers to the HBCU's program. It's the pipeline idea. HBCU is sort of lazy to keep bringing that one up, but the idea is investing in pipelines and relationships. Strategy 4 is pretty specific. Any questions about that? Strategy 5 actually looks kind of like strategy 2. Again, the flexibility, locations, working professionals, maybe a more non-traditional path for graduate. Does anybody feel like 1 through 5 says be all things to all people? Just me? Okay. So I would throw out to a group for discussion, that is what it says. You don't see us backing away from any markets. I think that is an institutional decision to maybe engage in. Are we full speed ahead of every possible thing that we could possibly be doing? This is kind of hinting at that, even if the wording isn't specific yet. You don't see us saying, hey, that looks great, but that's not part of our mission or vision. It's like, oh, that's an emerging, that's a market that has potential, that's a market that has potential, so let's invest in all of those.
We have to optimize it.
Love that word. Relationships to support. So this is where we sort of diverged from some of the typical objectives, the ones that we were handed. If your handout's like mine, I don't even have an objective 3 here, but it is clearly here. Develop and sustain relationships programs to support. How to clearly communicate the quality and quantity of student support services. Is that the right thing? Nope. Develop pathways. Okay, this is the pathways program. These are not aligned. The idea is that we are not just buying names, sending out mailings, and hoping students respond and come visit and like us. The idea is that through the development of relationships, everything that seems very obvious, Kevin's working really hard on a relationship with Scott Air Force Base, for instance, which is not really well developed compared to what you might think based on how close they are to us and how long we've been in proximity to each other. I know you could nod, but you're on the committee. What's the difference between a relationship with Scott Air Force Base and telling the marketing folks, let's put something on the radio that says we're military friendly?
Well, I guess the difference is right now we're an unknown factor for all the military people that are on base. There are schools that are on base right now that have programs that are available, and that's where they're funneled to, and that's where they go. We have just recently gotten on their radar due to our military tuition rate that came out in June. And so now we're on a piece of paper in there that says that we meet certain guidelines that they would like us to meet. one of my goals would be to get us into the education center, but there are complications with that because there are rules about no compete, and we're late to the game. All these other schools are in there. They will only allow one school per program. So if they have an MBA program out there that Webster has, we can't be out there as an MBA program. That's something that I'll be working on, trying to chisel away and seeing what we can do there, but we're just so late to the game right now. But that doesn't mean we're done, doesn't mean we're finished, and that's what I'll be working on.
So to invest the time and the human resources to improve that relationship. Alumni Connections looks like a really lazy thing to put there. We see this happen here. If you go to the career fair, specifically if you go to engineering has an open house for undergraduate students, they will have a lot of regional employers in a mini career fair at their open house. They have like their version of preview. A lot of times behind the tables for Boeing and other companies are SIUE alumni who work at those companies who are saying that is like the gold standard of the supportive relationship. When we have successful alums working in industry or in graduate school somewhere, and we take advantage of those connections to help talented undergrads move to employment or graduate school. 2+2 agreements, articulation agreements, those are documents on paper, but they facilitate relationships and discussions. They're important in and of themselves, but even the process of updating those helps solidify relationships with community colleges. Summer camps, we talked about that, one of the strategies. Right now we have thousands of students attend summer camps at the university, and we don't have a collective database that gets that little 8-year-old into our system for whatever we're going to do to make them part of the SIUE family for the next 10 years. So good things happening, but maybe not full synergy. And then I think we've done really well with the SIUE undergrad to grad, but there's always additional potential there. Dual credit, somewhat, I'd say, not controversial, complicated. Some four-year schools do this not only as a way to increase their enrollment numbers, but to develop relationships and pipelines with high schools that we're very aware of their curriculum and what their students will do here. Test optional is huge. No state school in Illinois is doing that. They still all require the ACT or SAT. But we could look into that. We are going to look into that. It won't be up to the administration to decide whether or not that's something we'll put in place. We have to find a replacement for ACT and SAT as far as predictability of success if we're going to go that way. Pre-collegiate pathway programs, that's what we're talking about, and the pre-graduate pathway programs beyond something like an HBCU initiative. So this is another area that we diverged and discussed and might be of interest to you. It's different than some of the typical ideas. And remember, Nathan Brewer was in the group, so marketing was there. This is not the discussion that was saying bad things about our marketing efforts. We're a big and complex place. The idea here is how can we clearly communicate the quality of the academic programs and, more importantly, the student support services and activities on campus. So let's say you pick an academic program that has a great reputation and students wanting to come here for that academic program. Do our co-curricular programs, and Jeffrey Whipple was on this committee too, do we market, we talked about this in the admissions office lately, university housing as a reason to select SIUE. We invest a lot in support services many of the opportunities in this building. Are they a reason are they a nice service that you get when you enroll here, or are they a reason to consider enrolling here at our institution? And are we marketing that? We invest a lot of money in student support services. Any thoughts about that?
A real brief thought. You mentioned camps, maybe that was on the previous slide.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a counselor at Boise State, there's Boise State in every state, this was at Eastern. And the people at Eastern told me, there'd be 1,000 high school juniors going to Eastern every year in Boise State, and they loved it, kids loved it. And Eastern got a disproportionate share of those kids going to Eastern because they had a great experience. So I wonder if we can do more of that type of thing, bring people here when they're younger.
UI has a corner market on some athletic programs. Western for years had a massive, they still do. Original high school kids go to Western for band camps and orchestra camps. Maybe once upon a time, some of you have been here longer than I have, those things were all connected. We'll do this intentionally to drive interest and create a relationship. Since I've been
Soccer
here,
camps or something.
yeah. This is not objective 7, which is really interesting. But this is the same thing, balance the marketing of the institution and its academic programs. So there, please other committee members speak up when we talked about this. When you're watching a Cardinal game, one of those great commercials pops up about SIUE, there's not time to talk in depth about a high quality academic program. But those are really cool commercials. I like them. I like the Cardinals. They make me very happy. How do we, individual departments, those with initiative, those with money, tend to go to marketing and say, can you help us market X, Y, Z, market X, Y, Z? In my opinion, there's good institutional marketing and branding. But what's our strategic approach to balancing that? So if there's a program that should be marketing and put out front, marketed and put out front, but they don't have the initiative or the resources, who at the institution says, you come here, we're pulling you, and we're putting you here out front? Is that a decent interpretation, committee members? What's the institutional approach? This is more about on the recruitment side, and this is a Nathan thing and a Chancellor Pembroke thing. There are increasing resources dedicated to marketing or recruitment for Jim, for Todd, and Doug's shop. We always need to be aware, as we communicate with the rest of the community, what the return on those investments is. Any thoughts about these? Same thing, strategy 4, marketing resource, launch new programs. This is a reminder to all of us, to leadership, that that if we're going to launch new programs, there are everything from instructional costs to marketing costs to a lot of time, whatever. What Laura's shops has to do, what Todd's shop has to do is just absorbed. But if we're going to bring new programs to market to optimize enrollment, and we need to make sure that we recognize all the dollars that will be needed to make that happen. Brand consistency. So this is a question the Chancellor often asks, and I don't know that we defined it real well yet. We still are, I think we're still in the bucket of trying to do everything well. We haven't really, if we try to come up with a list of things that makes us distinct, I think we're all a little bit nervous that whatever's not on that list, we've somehow said is less important or less good. That's not true, but I think that's kept us from saying SIUE is our list of distinctions. Some of you have been here a while. Tell me about this one, list of things that are distinct. I don't want the list unless you want to give it, because I've been in lots of meetings where those lists are created. But what about the process of creating that list? How does an institution do that? How would you hope we do that? Who does that? Do we just look at a chancellor and say, hey boss, lead us, tell us what's distinct? Is it a hard thing to do? recorded. I think that's a really bad idea. Optimize SIUE academic portfolio. This is really tricky. Remember, I said there were just a couple of deans on here that didn't object to this. There were not a lot of faculty on our committee. But this is about the relevance of our academic programs, whether that's how they're delivered, what the content is. My favorite way to talk about it is the way Chancellor Hansen used to mention in the year that he was here. He sort of landed on this phrase, talking to new students. Some of you will end up with jobs and careers that 4 years from now that don't even exist at this moment. So there is an evolution in skill sets, an evolution of the programs we would deliver. How do we organize SIUE to at least make those opportunities available to the academic side of the house, make that information known? And that includes, where the questions are, what do we offer, what can we offer, what should we offer, how should we offer it, what's the delivery modality. But there are sort of research and data-driven answers to that, that it can at least queue it up and put it in front of those who can make the decisions. Now the heavy lifting still has to be done, but we can put in our strategic planning, and we're already sort of doing this whether it ends up here or not, a way to present that information to the academic side of the house on a regular basis. And what they do with it is, what we do with it is a different topic. Any thoughts about that? Optimizing the academic portfolio. Does that make faculty nervous? No?
The academic portfolio. No, actually, I was going to talk to you offline about this, but you don't have a center for predictive analytics now. Carrie, what's on my, and is there, seems like collaboration between.
I would agree with you. We did, I mean, we sort of created two groups at the same time. And Chris heads up our Ezra group, which basically does a lot of things, but is tied in a meaningful way to employment, national employment statistics, which is really contained in that language and that way of thinking. On the academic side of the house, again, they can sort of translate that to what we might do here. Talked to Dr. Budsman a few times. I'm not exactly sure what the big plans are for the analytics program. Okay, now, by the way, 2 or 3 of the meetings, Norris Manning ran them and I was not there, and I think this was discussed as I was rewriting this. I'm like, okay, I'm not sure I was there that day, but what this is, my interpretation of this is we're always building, forgive me, brand loyalty to SIUE from beginning of recruitment to that first experience as a freshman. We talk about it as enrollment yield and retention numbers. Those are the outcomes. Those are the spreadsheets you see after you've done a good job of communicating who we are and keeping someone engaged at the institution. Tyler, do you want to, I just throw you on the spot, do you want to talk about this concept at all?
I think another part of it being the interim director for retention starts with recruitment. All the way from the high schooler when the students, the first moment they have that engagement with SIUE. And then once we get here, once they're in their classes, we're taking it to a level now where we're not only taking classes, but we're really wanting to know, okay, are we meeting your expectations? Are we doing what we said we do? And tracking these students on an individualized basis with that, advising all the way down to, we've got our big assessment now that we're reaching out to faculty to say, how are these students doing? What are some red flags? So we're just trying to make sure that their experiences, we don't recruit, get them here, and then say, okay, good luck with the college experience. Now in the 21st century, it's more individualized, like between marketing with social media and making sure messages are being sent out, and the students are checking their email, which is one of our big challenges. So I think it's as you said, from the moment that they're onboarded to the moment that they're brought in, we're trying to make sure that beyond matriculation all the way through graduation that we're tracking the entire experience.
So we have the opportunity now with technology, social media, other opportunities for students to tell us exactly what they want. we then have the opportunity to ignore that and go, oh, thanks for telling us. And answer it by saying, we have 300 student organizations. No, I just told you the student organization I want. Or we can connect them directly with that thing that is important to them. This isn't strategic planning, but there's, through Starfish, there's an opportunity now, a new product, I think we're gonna bring this on board very soon, where we can do a survey with students for them to tell us exactly what would have them engage with the university at a deeper level, or where they're struggling, and then take that information at that moment and hand it over to Dominic or Courtney or intramural athletics, and really respond in almost real time to a student based on what their needs are. I think these are kind of those points. It's not like, oh, we gave you the right scholarship and now you're here and good luck and come see us if you have any problems. It's just constantly figuring out what it is that would enhance their experience here.
Scott, the piggyback there, I think in the 21st century, we're seeing more student, this is the Amazon, Netflix generation, where they can actually go ahead and tailor-make everything to their experience, and that now includes higher education, where instead of just saying, here are your options, you have to drill down and even show that here, provide the option directly to them for that experience.
Definitely, would you like? I mean, based on their preferences.
Suggestions?
Yeah, suggestions. Based on all of their, based on all of their data, yeah. And everything that they said that they prefer.
I was listening to a podcast this morning that said, we're going to advertise to you through this podcast. Now, if you listen to it, I'm lost at the Smithsonian. We're going to advertise to you through this podcast, but we want to know what to advertise to you. So will you please go here and do this survey so we'll know what to push to you? They just said it. And that's kind of this. If we're gathering this information on students, and we have all these wonderful resources that they're all paying for. There's a lot of student fees here, a lot of great stuff. What can we do to connect them with it? This was the fun one. Now that you're asleep, I'll bring this up on the slide here. Norris, is this the one? Yes, this is Norris Manning's work. I will try to interpret, and this was a lot of fun discussion. Anthologize and promote student outcomes in history. We think what we do and what our marketing offices do is a combination of when a student gets a great award or has a great recognition, that becomes a story, and we post it and we do a really great job of that. When the athletics program has really great completion rates and average GPAs, when that happens, we post that. We want it allowed, and again, Nathan was in the room. That is, it's reactive. It's good, but is there a difference of being proactive, that setting up a framework for the institution to routinely gather student successes, alumni successes, faculty successes, and that's just kind of part of who we are as an administration and a faculty, that we are constantly looking for things, even annually, date-driven activities, awards. Who will we put forward in any given year? And then sometimes that collection of student achievements is up to the faculty member of the department that's most closely related to the student. And if they don't happen to let marketing know about it, we might not know about it. So can we as an institution, and just by one of these ways, talk about what we do want to intentionally celebrate at the institution. Make sure we're not humble, make sure that we don't overlook successes. When we did, I think here, we talked about things like even senior assignment or the IRCA. We talk about those things as big initiatives. What about the outstanding programs in each area? What if we intentionally said, we're going to pick the 3 top IRCA projects and promote those for a year? It's kind of like the art walk. Top sculptures are chosen, they're implemented, they're installed, and they're with us for a year and part of who we are. I don't know, that's a good example of that. Anybody on the committee want to talk about this? What do you think about this as an objective under enroll prepared and diverse students? We're thinking students will be attracted to us if they see students like them being recognized here. I think that's the goal.
You have to identify the narrative, identify the student narrative, identify their stories, and then align to see, okay, so this is my story, this is what I dreamt of, or this is what I'm expecting. If we can play into that and say, this is how we can help your story, this is us helping fulfill what you've imagined in your head. If we can show other stories of students who've done that, I think it allows the students to connect and feel like, I can become what I dreamt of, I can achieve what I want to achieve in life, because that's how you can come to it.
And I think this would like to kind of make that part of our personality. Oh yes, we do that here. We've done that again here. Not, oh, there's a student who did something really wonderful. That happens frequently here. That's a little different than this is who we are.
I'm wondering if there was any discussion around this about logistically using digital badging as a way to track more high impact student outcomes and that sort of thing? Because I know there's conversations about digital badging happening at the university elsewhere, and it seems like there could be some connections to this sort of piece.
I don't know that we talked about it here.
Just because it not only helps to track it institutionally when students are doing internships or other things that we might decide we want to recognize, but also helps students be able to share their story externally because it gives them a way to put it out on social media and share those experiences with others.
Great, yeah, I think we think of badging as being of value to an employer, not as a...
Yeah, but it provides some institutional track of students who are doing great. Who do we want to keep track of for alumni stories down the road and things like that.
Any other thoughts along this? Okay, we'll do it. Optimize credit hour production. What this means is, and I'm going to sort of, Jim, if this is a bad thing, it would be your fault. If it's a good thing, it would be something that you brought to our attention in the past. This is that you whether it's badging or skill sets or majors, minors, certificates, we tend to talk in predefined buckets in higher education. Sometimes you have to for accreditation issues. It's not something to be taken lightly. But Jim had identified a while back that there is potentially a market for students who have completed their undergraduate education anywhere and are not admissible to a professional school, let's say med school, and they want to come back and say something like biology and take these 3 courses, and it's not part of anything we have constructed that is meaningful. You're not degree seeking, but you need these 3 courses, need to do well to get into that person's med school. Do we have an avenue for that? Are we willing to create an opportunity for that market of students? They get 9, 12 credit hours that they pay us for. They don't walk away with any degree or certificate or anything we put in a bucket, but yet we have filled seats, met a need for the community, produced revenue, that sort of idea without totally, sort of my word, not the community, bastardizing the higher education environment. Are there opportunities for us to deliver meaningful credit hours to the community, and it's a win for them and a win for us? Thoughts about that, especially from the faculty side, I'm interested.
If there's courses already being offered, I mean, we don't care who's in them, whether they're degree seeking or not, right?
Katie, did you write that down?
Not always at the graduate level.
No, I mean, but for some undergraduate courses, if it's a good survey course, you know, somebody who wasn't in a particular major, I mean, wouldn't really make any difference.
Yeah, some departments might not think so. They will, I mean, I course which, you know, and if it's like one of our required classes, then, well, we prefer, of course, regular students, especially due to class caps and things like that. But actually, our graduate classes are not usually having the class cap problem. But then, I mean, they're still going to be evaluated. They should still have taken the prerequisites. So,
If this was something we were gonna go after, what would that look like for persistence or graduation rates? I mean, would that make our numbers look, because this is something that we went after.
Because they wouldn't be coming in a freshman, they wouldn't be tracked in those metrics.
They would be non-degree seeking. That's a good point, though. So there are always unintended consequences. And Laura just left the room. She may have already said that. But it's the idea of seeing a need, maybe a non-traditional need in the marketplace, and then being willing to be flexible to meet that. Walter, do you have any thoughts on that from a professional school perspective?
Well, we don't really get into that, but my thought was if you have a student who takes courses with the intent of maybe going to a professional school, how are we going to look at that? Because we're so tethered to somebody got a degree or somebody.
That's the
So that becomes
issue to address, or to discuss, or to work through. Or maybe this is one of those times we're not all things to all people. Maybe this is one market we're not willing to be in.
Do we want to say that if, a chancellor says you may be doing something 5 years down the road that it hasn't been invented yet or whatever, well, someone already has a degree, they may not want to come back to the university for a whole degree, but they may need some additional education. And are we meeting that need, and how are we doing it, how are we counting it, how are we making it look like we're having a positive impact for students, and not just, oh, these are students that aren't graduating. Well, no, but they're getting something.
Can we get some more feedback on that?
Yeah, well, and I can say too, if you're packaging it as a certificate or something, it's a 9-credit-hour certificate, and we could as an institution decide we're going to be flexible on
More flexible
what
than we are right
constitutes a
now.
certificate, because right now for a post-bac, it's in policy that it has to be 18 hours. But if we can change that, as other Illinois universities have done, and say 9 hours constitutes a certificate, and we package it to say it's a med school prep or something that we know there's demand for, then they do look like completers of what they intentionally came in as, and they do leave with something.
Scott, I also, this is just maybe a little bit on the edge of this, but I know education is a critical shortage of teachers in Illinois nationwide, and a lot of universities have non-traditional programs for adult learners, people coming back. And we used to have that, and in a way it was very cumbersome, but I mean, there might be an opportunity there to restart something like that.
So Scott, is it also the case that it's not just student demand, but it's employer demand? They're wanting more things like certificates or shorter term recognition of something learned.
And you have to be nimble and quick. I think if we wait too long, then everybody else is already doing it.
So there's a good cross-section of folks in here. What about SIUE's culture is positioned to take advantage of this? Is this something that we don't do particularly well right now, we could do?
I don't think you can generalize, I think it's gotta be program specific.
That is, we're open to it as an institution. You go to the early adopters and hope others follow. That's exactly right, Nancy, from winter session to online, just in the time I've been here. That's what we started with, the people who were willing.
I would say the other opportunity there too is if we can build more certificates, it provides an opportunity for stackable credentials. So maybe they come here thinking, I just want these 9 or 12 credit hours for this certificate, but then it feeds into the master's degree. So, well, now I've already got 12 credit hours in the master's done, so I can do that in 3 more semesters, and that becomes more attractive.
It seems like right now this market need might be being met by institutions that offer a lot of online. So maybe that there's, keeping that in mind while it's being considered, and maybe there's a way for us to, you know, flip that a little bit, or fill a niche that right now is kind of being dominated by that type of curriculum.
Be conscious, yeah, of how accessible.
Because if you're also having those individuals who are working full-time,
And then say, okay, I'd like to get the certificate, but I can't because I work full-time. So how we can merge in with their working lifestyles to be able to use.
Push it from the perspective because faculty again, because the online has been mentioned again. Obviously, online classes they take some time to prepare and whatnot. And then when you want to propose either a previous class to be online or a new online class, it goes through quite some. You know, you have to talk obviously with your chair and they're not always so open for your regularly taught classes to be online, particularly if it's a core class. So, or and then there's scheduling of the classes, which is not completely up to the faculty. So, if a lot of things, I see that there's some move towards online for different reasons and from the different strategies, but there's you can't just when you want to, let's say let's say there's going to be later, let's say data science certificate or master in data science, which there is kind, and that could be online, right? Well, some of the faculty would be interested in teaching that. It's hard for them to start even making an online class related to that, even if they're regularly teaching some non-online version of it. So, I mean, that jump is hard to incentivize from the faculty perspective. There were some UE grants a while ago that were focused on online, but right from previous couple iterations was not, for example. And what is I don't know, there seems to be there's a disconnect between the institutional demand for online classes versus departmental resistance.
Incentives or politics or both? What do you generally?
I mean, it's hard to yeah, it's hard
so
to
I heard
start
politics,
it.
but that's I'm thinking just alignment from if I'm teaching this and I'd like to teach it online, that I can't just do that on my own.
Of course, yeah, but also even if you want to, if you want to make a new class online, let's say, that still has to, everything first of all has to be, of course, approved, yeah, and, chair, dean, usually it's, the chair level, that would be the issue there, but not only that, then, if you want to create a number of online classes, you're not guaranteed to be offering them regularly because of scheduling, right?
So if I just bounce that thought to a strategic planning group with just a couple of faculty and one dean, what we're talking about here is including some kind of mechanism that allows us to capture and recognize interests of individual faculty without a badge having been created.
At the end of the day, the faculty will be teaching the classes, right? Faculty are the ones who are going to. I'm saying in multiple strategies and objectives, online things come up, right? And I'm saying, you can't just jump into all of a sudden here's an online. They have to have been continuously created and expanded upon in their different, departments. Like if a new department, if eventually, in our department, we have interest in an online thing. Well, right now we're infinitely far from that because we only have 2 regularly offered online classes, right? What's going to happen? All of a sudden, the faculty are going to, put a lot of energy in creating an online program, for example, or do you see what I'm saying? And I see that there's a disconnect between institutional demand for online classes versus sometimes departmental resistance.
I would just say it's a complicated process.
Yeah.
You mentioned the word incentives. That's also that's often
Because time.
part of this. Whether it's for the faculty member or revenue sharing or and in the meantime, what I think what this group is talking about, and that is very important what you're saying, because there could be a demand sitting right out there.
Yeah.
And we can pull some lovely statistics that confirm that. And we can say, we have course content developed that addresses that demand. Now, how does the institution get from where we are to addressing that demand for that content delivered in? So that's the last slide. We're at an hour. again, the Cardinals don't start for a while. If anybody wants to go back to anything, if you're just saying, oh gosh, no, we're glad this is done, I do appreciate the input we've received. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure there will be an opportunity for this information to be posted and additional comments to be gathered. My understanding is from here, we're going to do this one more time, and if you have time to think about it, actually want to come back and go again on the 25th, you can. But this information and what's gathered here will be turned over to the University Quality Council, who will then work this and the other goals into the next iteration in the strategic planning process. I also welcome you to go ahead and email me with additional thoughts about what you have in your hand there.
There are some updated ones in case anyone wants them as well.
Updated? Oh, more of those, correct. Any other comments at all? Anything that's like, there's a whole big hole in here? Yeah.
So the goal talks about diverse student body, but I just feel like there's not a lot of emphasis on diversity. It comes under certain objectives. And I feel like sometimes we kind of look at minorities and underserved, but was there any thought or discussion about targeted diversity, like women in STEM or engineering or
So,
maybe specific
and any of
areas?
the committee members here can speak to this. Total awareness of that, yes. There is a diversity plan that speaks very specifically to those things. The idea here, and we have, I would say most of the group is very supportive of diverse initiatives, including underrepresented domestic students, international students. The idea here is embedded within each of these. If we are celebrating the success of students, touting the strength of our student support services, championing faculty achievements. I hate to say implied because again that sounds lazy, but we absolutely talked about it, and the idea was through real examples, the pipelines into the feeder high schools, like we're already doing with the charter school and the HBCU initiative. So there are, you don't see increased African American enrollment, but I can think of the pre-collegiate program and the HBCU initiative as two things that are very specifically to increase African American enrollment. As you read that, does your comment suggest that there should be more direct
Diversity.
statements about diversity?
Because it just feels like it's it's in the goal, but then I just feel like it doesn't pop out at me in a lot of these areas.
Yeah, and I would agree with that because what I'm seeing is at the end of some of the objectives, you put in like the word diversity to kind of cover that, but still, when I think of what we're talking about here, it's not very much.
I think those are really interesting comments because having sat on the committee, we talked about it a ton actually, and so it's really interesting that it did not come out in the printed. So I think that maybe we need to be a little more intentional with it. I would agree with you that when I see it in print, no, it doesn't reflect how much actual time we spent discussing that and how important we felt it was. So thanks for that. I agree.
And do we need to be careful to not make the assumption that when we use, when we say HBCU, when we say pre-collegiate programs, when we say trio programs, that everyone reading the finished plan will not automatically understand that those programs are all focused primarily on underrepresented students. We shouldn't assume that.
Not a big deal, obviously, with women and stuff either, but that, I think that is a thing that is difficult. I mean, as a woman and stuff, I'm saying this, like, very few universities, do that. We just have it with our, like, student groups, we, introduce it with engineering days, and things like that, for younger, and then we have some departmental or school of engineering endeavors, you know. But I think that specifically was not addressed. So I agree with that.
Okay. Other comments? Thank you for your time. Do not hesitate to, the only Scott O'Brady can the rectory. Do not hesitate to email me or any of the committee members that you see there. Things you might like to add into or take out. Thank you.